Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Shantonia Lewis and I'm a qualified counsellor, and today I have a wonderful guest with me. We're going to be talking about obsessive compulsive disorder and OCD. And at this time, I'm just going to let my guest introduce herself and we can just know a little bit more about her. So take it away.
Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Kim. I'm a qualified counsellor as well, a psychotherapeutic counsellor, and I'm currently in private practice, and I've specialised in person-centred therapy, but I'm also trained in CBT and mindfulness.
Amazing. And just to know, guys, like we used to live in uni together and it was wonderful. It was great, and she's such an inspiration. I'm going to talk a little bit more about her project later on, just so you guys know what she's doing. It's just amazing. Follow her and get involved. Yes. So Kim, we're talking about OCD and explain a little bit about what it is and what's understood by OCD. Yeah, what is it?
Right. So OCD, I think, is a little bit I think people just throw around those words very easily. It's actually made up of two parts, which is obsessions, which is the obsessive part of it, which is kind of like, unwelcome thoughts or urges or worries or doubts that are kind of repeatedly appearing in your mind. And it can make you feel anxious or cause some kind of mental discomfort. And then the second half of that is compulsions, which is like when people create repeated behaviors or activities in order to reduce the anxiety that is actually caused by the obsession, that's caused by whatever that worry actually is. But people are so easy to be like, oh, I've got a bit of OCD, and it's actually a lot more disruptive than a passing comment that you can kind of just throw out there.
100%. I feel like, before I even did counselling and even went to uni about it, you hear about OCD and automatically just think, you just want things in a certain way and you just clean too much and you just want everything to be perfect. And actually, when I was researching it, basically said that many people do have a little bit of OCD traits. So it may want things in a certain order, and for example, in your bedroom or in your house, just want things in a particular way. If anyone moves it, you just get a bit, why are you moving my stuff? Why do you change this around? You just want things to be clean and tidy. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's fine. But if it gets severe, that's when there's a problem and it has to be diagnosed by the doctor. So that you have OCD. It actually affects 1.2% of the population in the UK.
That doesn't sound like a lot, but if you think about the UK has millions of people, quite literally. So that 1.2% is actually, that's hefty. That's fat. Especially when it's like you said, when it's actually specifically diagnosed. Yes, wanting things in your house to be in a particular place. But I think people sometimes confuse OCD with the need to be in control. And that's not really why it can be why it happens, but it's not particularly why it's happened. So I'm like, yes, you might want things or your house to be in a certain place, the feng shui to be right. But if it's off, does it send you into mental turmoil? Do you get what I mean? Does it disrupt your life? And that's a little bit of a difference.
100%. And I think it's important to know that OCD is an anxiety disorder. It's not just have OCD and everything's fine, you do it. It's an anxiety, which is important to know. So, like you said, Kim, I mean, someone who does live with, obsessive compulsive disorder, they do have these compulsive thoughts and behaviors. And those thoughts can often be time consuming, it can take up a lot of your day, just thinking about different things. So an obsessive thought, I just want to talk about that a bit, what exactly is it? We've broken down, OCD and obsessive compulsive disorder. So what is an obsessive thought?
So an obsessive thought is basically something that's constantly intrusive in your mind, and you are it causes a lot of worry and or anxiety and or mental discomfort, but it's something that you don't feel like you have control over. So it's either fleeting, but like on a constant basis. And it could be something quite literally, it's like, oh, my friends don't like me.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? And that, but thinking that once, or thinking that throughout the day, all the time, every 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, that's a lot to take on as a person.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Or like having the fear that your house is going to burn down. Like, do you get what I mean? Like, if I leave my house is going to burn down. If I leave, and running that in your brain constantly, that's exhausting, because it takes up a lot of mental space, because basically internally you're freaking out. And you're trying to control that on the inside so it doesn't come out on the outside, but it does end up coming out on the outside, because that's when the behaviors kick in.
Yes.
And life is constant, and you don't really know what people's worries are, or what their particular triggers are, or what these intrusive thoughts are. So someone can literally be sat staring into space and their mind is telling them an absolute madness. Or I shouldn't even call it an absolute madness, just things that are very mentally detrimental to them. And you don't always see that. And it's not always clear to see that, because some people don't want to share that. Some people feel embarrassed or ashamed about it, and which isn't nice. But also it's very hard for people who don't understand the extent of OCD, how OCD can disrupt your life. It's very hard to be like, oh, I have OCD, because people are like, oh, you'll be fine. And obviously brushing off mental health issues is renowned. When people don't understand the extent of, again, the amount of like issues it can cause you from day to day.
100%. Like you said, like these thoughts are unwanted. They're just in your mind all the time, and you just can't stop it. So intrusive. An example, you mentioned a good one. It's my house going to burn down if I leave the house, and you're just constantly thinking about that. Another one might be fear that something bad might happen if things aren't symmetrical. So if things aren't in order and how you want it, you feel that something bad's going to happen to you. You might be worried about harming yourself or harming other people, which can be common. And you may even have like sexually disturbing images or thoughts. In your relationships, you're constantly thinking about if your spouse or partner is going to leave you, if it's going to end at any moment. All these thoughts are just, like I said, it's a lot to take on as a person. To have them in your head all the time, non-stop, when it's intrusive, it's awful. So often people who do have intrusive thoughts can be afraid to tell a health professional about that, in fear of them being labelled as having OCD or having a mental disorder, or fear of being a risk to other people around them. Just to know that like health professionals, if you do tell them, they are there to help you. They're not going to do things against your will. They have to have your consent. And they just want to make sure that you're okay. They're not going to take anything from you, which is so important. So compulsions. Okay, this is like, so we did the obsessive bit, which is thoughts, and then the compulsions, which is like the behavior. Let's talk about that for a bit. So compulsions, what exactly are they?
So it is repeated behaviors basically that help to reduce the anxiety that you get from the obsessions. So if it is a case of, let's see, someone needing to close the door 3 times, like that, doing that, that repeated behavior brings their anxiety down. So if they need to do it 3 times, if they need to do it 7 times, whatever, it brings their anxiety down and they feel a sense of relief. And obviously that's what they want. They want to be relieved from these constant intrusive thoughts. So that is basically what a compulsion is. It's just repeated activities that allow someone to reduce their level of anxiety, so they feel like they can progress throughout their day.
Sure. Even with the compulsions, when it's carried out, sometimes, often, the relief that you feel often doesn't last long. So you have to be constantly, like you were saying, And this may make your original obsession even stronger than it was. And like you said, Kim, like not everyone with OCD, they show signs of, the compulsion behavior. Their compulsion may not be seen by other people, but it may be something like repeating a word or a particular phrase in their head. And some examples of compulsions could be like checking things repeatedly, like you said, maybe like the door, the windows, making sure the appliances are turned off. It could be washing or cleaning things excessively. You're always washing, always cleaning, always making sure that everything's just in order and in place. Carrying something out in a particular order. So if anything goes out of that order, the anxiety kicks in. Then everything has to be in a particular way. It could be like a standard sequence that goes on in your head, or repeating numbers repeatedly to get that relief. So the thoughts and rituals, it can take up a lot of your time, like you were saying before. It's just a lot. It affects your day-to-day life. People may have a fear of contamination, which is interesting. Compulsive checking, hoarding, can be common for people with OCD. So I'm going to look at contamination, checking, and hoarding. So contamination first. So obviously with people with OCD, they always clean. So that's making sure that everything's tidy, everything's, just so. I'm just wondering how that affects people in their everyday lives.
I think it can affect you in, like you said, so if your day is taken up by that task, that can be a lot. So that means that, you could potentially not be able to go to work. You could potentially not be able to go to school, or not go to social events, and that's going to affect your mental health because you're then withdrawn. You can feel super isolated and you can feel super lonely. But it's a case of, well, for them, it could be, well, the anxiety that I feel, the mental discomfort that I feel, it's not worth. It's not worth socializing. It's not worth going to school. It's not worth going to work because I'm going to be uncomfortable and I don't want to be uncomfortable, which is completely understandable. But then it's kind of like someone's missing out on different experiences in life. You know what I mean? And obviously that's subject to people's opinion and potentially, if you want to get controversial, it's a conformative thing. But I guess the way that we see life, or we are taught that life is best lived, is if we live it in full, kind of having additional people in our lives, being able to do things, go out, experience things. And when you do have obsessive behaviors, it's very hard to do that because it's kind of like, well, who's to say that going outside is worth feeling this way?
Right.
And I don't know how extreme it is for somebody, but it's like when you feel nervous, you know what I mean? I know this is probably a minor example in comparison to how people are feeling, but when you feel nervous and then you're like, oh, I feel so sick, I don't want to do something, or it's just so bad that you're like, no, you can fully just pull the plug.
Yeah.
That could be for something I don't like, going on a roller coaster, or for people who have a fear of heights, general anxiety. Now that's when you put yourself in a particularly anxiety inducing situation.
Yeah.
If your OCD is constant, and it's just constantly throughout your day, you're constantly in an anxiety inducing situation.
Yeah.
Which means that you constantly feel that awful feeling. Of course you're not going to want to go out.
Yeah.
I might love my friends, but I'm I love me more. And being with you doesn't distract me from the things that come in my brain. And right. I think people also assume that as well, as kind of it's fine, just go out, you won't remember about it. Your mind is constantly working. It's constantly going. So what makes you think that my brain is going to be oh yeah, now that you're outside, let me just be quiet and let you live your life. But when we're inside, we're just going to take over. No.
Sure.
It's not that simple.
Right. And even like you said with the contamination thing, going out to a public place or school or work, you don't want to be touching, when you have OCD, to touch, the telephone or to touch a computer keyboard is something you don't want to be doing. because you're just going to face get germs. You know, to even shake someone's hand is difficult because you feel like I'm going to get germs. And it's a danger to me and to people around me. They don't be using the public toilets or shared toilets. To even go to someone else's house can be difficult. To sharing objects such as money, even remote controls can be very hard. Even visiting the hospital or the GP surgeries, all those things is that fear of contamination. And in that way, like you said, Kim, it's that social isolation thing. You know,
exactly. If you had a remote and I gave it to you, sorry to interrupt, if I had a remote, you had OCD, and I'm like, here, and you're like, do you get like, I'm gonna feel a certain type of way because if I don't know and you don't feel comfortable telling me, then I'm gonna assume that you're saying I have germs, which obviously everyone does, but it's either for you to feel extremely uncomfortable and basically be overcome with anxiety by taking that remote from me, which has its own issue, or it's then me going like, what's your problem?
Right.
And then that's confrontation, which then makes the person feel awful or makes the person feel anxious, and it's a vicious cycle.
Yes. 100%. You know, it can affect your social life. You know, not wanting to go to someone's house or fear that anyone coming to your house will bring in germs. You know, like you said, it's obsessive. It's a thought that you can't control, but unfortunately, these behaviors are acted out. Checking. You mentioned earlier about, you know, the example of checking, was it the door or something? Yes. That's a compulsion. And when you feel the need to check something repeatedly, like you mentioned earlier, you know, you worry that someone may be harmed if you don't check something. So what are like the common examples of checking?
So for example, it could be before you go to bed, you know, checking every single possible entrance or exit point that you have in your house. I mean, it's like if you're going to sleep, potentially checking to make sure your phone is always charged, you know what I mean? Like it's on, but unplugging, like just to make sure, you know, that your charger's working. It's like, you know, if you've cooked and then you want to go sit down and eat, going back to check multiple times to make sure the stove is off, you know, there's no gas, there's nothing running, but then your food's getting cold, and it can take away the joy from experiences. Like if I go back to the sleep one, you know what I mean? If you're constantly having to, your brain is like, your phone's not charging, you wake up.
Yes.
You know, then you have disruption of sleep and then you're not sleeping properly. I mean, you want to enjoy your food, you can't do that. Like you have to, you need to be out at your house by a certain point, or you need to be somewhere by a certain time, but you have to check everything and then to leave and think, oh, maybe I didn't check the bathroom window, to then go back in and do that again.
Right.
Like your life can just there's not fluidity, and that's gonna take its toll at some point. It just will. So which then comes back to, is it just easier to just not?
Right. You know, not everyone's understanding of what someone may be going through. Like you said, you know, you may look at someone and be like, why do you need to check everything all the time? You know, everything's fine. And, you know, even sometimes, you know, anyone in my life who checks things, I'm just thinking, why are you checking? Leave it alone. It's fine. It's okay. But for them, it's like, no, I need to, because it'll make me feel better if I check that the window is closed, or like the door is shut, or the door is locked, you know, and the check multiple times. Yeah, thank you, Kim. Also as well, like checking health symptoms online. I mean, I do it, and Google just tells you that you're dying, and you're gonna die in 2 weeks' time, you know. Google's extreme.
It's even law, but it's so bad. Like I will literally say to my clients, well, I'm like, because you know, we have clients come to you for like and they're like, oh look, I checked and I think I might have like A, B, C, and D. Like I might have bipolar, I might have multiple personality, and I'm like, okay, cool. Like I understand that, and I understand wanting to check, but like Google will fully tell you have schizophrenia.
It's crazy.
Like it's nothing.
Yeah. Or like you have a brain tumor, or like, you know, your leg needs cutting off. Do you know what I mean? All the extreme stuff. And someone who has OCD is worrying to them, so they're always going to check, like, if I have this, that means I'm going to have this, and if I have this, that means I'm going to have X, Y, and Z. You know, and next thing you know, they just think they're going to die in a week's time.
And can you imagine how stressful that is? Like I know I laugh, but literally, like and I particularly don't have a fear of death, but that's because I don't know. But can you, like, if your brain is like, you have 7 days to live, 3 hours to live, or it can just happen like that, you're going to do as much in your like control to lower the chances of any point of danger.
Yeah.
Because anxiety is our brain going, something's wrong, you know, like it's an alarm, it's flashing. And when everything you see is danger, that's a lot of flashing, that's a lot of noise. And then you're gonna close yourself. You just are.
Definitely. 100. Hoarding is another one, which again, a misconception. Before I did counseling and everything, there's, you know, I used to watch this show called Hoarders. Kim, I'm telling you, I used to think, how can you live like this? Like, there's so much stuff, it's clutter, like infestations going on, like just how? And you know, the therapist used to be there. I'm thinking, like, why is a therapist here? Like, what is their purpose? And it's only obviously when you do your whole training and you realize, actually, yeah, you know, you do need someone to talk to help you to overcome your hoarding addiction, you know, not collect things, to just help you out. So with hoarding, you know, people do find it difficult to get rid of items, and even people, you know, me, you know, do I hoard? I collect things.
That sounds like the start of something. Do I hoard? I collect things.
I collect shoes, you know, obviously I buy loads of shoes, high heels, bags, coats. I even have like these like Disney pop figures that I just have in my room. And it's so addictive, I'm not gonna lie. Like, you find one character, you're like, I need to get another one. And I had to be like, no, stop, because it's not gonna look aesthetically nice anymore. It's just gonna look like a whole, you know, line of stuff. You know, and that's not what I want to get to. I don't want my room to be cluttered up. Even with plants as well, I'm always buying plants. Yeah.
See, you made a really good point, because you're like, your brain can tell you to stop because your need for it to be aesthetically pleasing is overriding your need for stuff.
Right.
Where if someone is hoarding because they have OCD, there is nothing in their brain that goes, it's too much.
Right.
It's more like it's not enough, because it's like compulsions equal, like I said earlier, release of anxiety. So if you can buy, for example, 5 of the same things, the process is going to be, well, that's 5 additional like releases, you know, like that's 5 additional ways to bring my anxiety down, 10 additional ways to bring my anxiety down. And feeling uncomfortable, like I don't care about aesthetically pleasing things if I feel this way.
Sure.
But my brain is like, I'm like, yes, I want it, but where is it gonna go? And then if I feel like it disrupts my feng shui, then I won't do it. But obviously I don't have an OCD, so I understand that. But it's literally a case of like, we have even like the little thought processes that stop us, even if it's something as simple as aesthetics, that's enough for us to be like, okay, cool, I can leave it.
Yeah.
For someone who's suffering from a compulsive disorder, that doesn't count for anything. It literally doesn't count for food.
Sure, it's true. Like you said, they don't know how to stop hoarding, and if they throw something away, they may feel as though someone's going to be harmed if it's been thrown. They feel like an object may become, you know, useful at a later point. To be honest, I've kind of been there when you have items and you're thinking, oh no, it's going to be useful later, like let's just leave it. It's almost like throw it away. You've not used it in like 5 years, you know. And I'm just like, yeah, but it might be. It's like, no, just throw it. And you know, okay, you agree, you throw it, but for some people who have OCD, it's not as easy to just dash it away in the bin, you know. it's like, no, it's going to come useful later on. It's, you know, I'll find use for it. And for some people, they may be emotionally attached to that item. You know, it has some sentimental value and they don't feel like it should be thrown away. But then those looking in, you know, outside looking in, they're thinking, well, it could do with thrown in the bin, you know, it's served its time now. And it's like, no, I'm emotionally attached to this. I need to keep it. Which is interesting. So we've gone through the symptoms and everything about OCD. So how is it diagnosed, Kim?
So unlike other things, OCD isn't really like a like, so obviously most things are done like via like a either kind of like a checklist or like a, you know, like a DSM-5 kind of thing. But OCD is actually, it's kind of like one you have to go to a professional, so a mental health professional, you know, a psychiatrist, a psychologist, someone trained in order to spot it. But it's kind of like, how do I explain it? Think of it like a flowchart. So intrusive thoughts, which are obsessions, usually of anxiety, and then to reduce anxiety, we have behaviors, which are the compulsions, and then, but that gives temporary relief. And then because relief is temporary, then you're back to having the intrusive thoughts, and you're back to having anxiety, and you're back to having the compulsions, and you're back to doing something that gives temporary relief, and it just and it runs that cycle. And then, so that's one way of, I guess, kind of checklisting it. So if you can kind of do that, if you think you have something that follows that kind of list, and also I think if you do it a lot of the time and it gets in the way of important activities, I think that's a question that's asked. Does it, you know, get in the way of you working, or like I said, going to school, socializing? Does it stop you from doing life, basically? Right. And I think that's kind of the way it's diagnosed. It's not kind of as black and white, because I think obviously it works with individuality as well, but I think that's basically the diagnosis for it.
Amazing, thank you. So anyone who is suffering with it, we can just go to their GP and or healthcare professional, like you said, and just, you know, go through all that assessment thing, which is good that they have that in place. So how is it treated?
The best way to treat it, or the best way that's been found to treat it, is through CBT, which is obviously cognitive behavioral therapy, and specifically it's exposure and response prevention, which is ERP, and is basically exposing the client to images and objects that make them anxious, because this will start the obsession. And then once the obsession is started, it's to get onto the kind of like the prevention part, and it's to make that choice to not start your compulsions that lower your anxiety once it's been triggered. Obviously, you're with a healthcare professional, so their job is to keep you safe. Like that's, I mean, so it's kind of knowing your boundaries as well. But I think a main part of it is about commitment, committing to that process and committing to not doing the compulsion. And I think if you've obviously been running the cycle for a really long time, it's going to be really hard, because your anxiety is going to get higher. Once it's been triggered, it's an alarm bell to set off, and the quickest way to stop that noise is to do your compulsions. But I think the purpose of it is to kind of prove that anxiety is something that obviously spikes, it's going to peak, but it always lowers. It has to lower, kind of thing. So it's kind of, as you do the compulsions, as your obsessions go and you don't do the compulsions, at some point your anxiety will go down. And it's about clocking that and realizing, okay, cool, like if I don't do this particular behavior, the world isn't going to come to an end, but that's going to take a while. And which is why the commitment part of that is basically essential, like, because it's hard to, it's kind of like putting yourself in what you're going to deem as harm's way. Because why do you want to feel Like, you don't want to feel anxious, you don't want to feel mental discomfort, you don't want to feel, for some people, pain, like you don't want to feel that stress. So to know that when you go into therapy, you're going to be given things or see things or put things in front of you that's going to set you off.
Yeah.
You have to try your hardest, or basically make a commitment to yourself and to your therapist that you're not going to do those compulsions. It's going to feel like you want to rip your hair out. And then you might not even want to come back, because it's going to be hard for you, especially the first time. I think I was watching a video or reading something, and it was like, it takes, or it's been known to take like between like 16 to 20 sessions, which is like 16 to 20 hours of repeating that behavior.
Yeah.
And if your therapy is an hour, which hour to 50 minutes, would you say? More so. That's a very long time to be in an anxiety-induced situation.
It's true. And to get help, like I mentioned, go to talking therapy, go to your GP or healthcare professional and seek the help that you need, so that you can, overcome and cope with OCD. So the causes of OCD, it could be like personal experience with it, biological and gene factors that could contribute to OCD, and even your personality style. If you're the person who gets anxious quite a bit, and you're always wanting things in a particular way, it can play a part in OCD, which is important to know. So, what risks and complications can OCD cause?
Risk and complications. So it can, the compulsions can be so overwhelming that it starts to take over your life, which means that you then don't potentially have a life. You can feel ashamed about the fact that you have to do certain things to relieve yourself of, the obsessive thoughts, and that can cause you to feel lonely and isolated, misunderstood, and just like an outsider, and that's going to hurt. You know what I mean? Especially if you don't want to be around your friends or your family, or it's not even, I shouldn't say don't want to be around. If you feel like you're going to be misunderstood, or your feelings are going to be dismissed, or your processes are going to be dismissed, that's going to feel like rejection. And rejection is an uncomfortable feeling. Nobody wants to feel rejected. No one wants to feel unloved, or like what they're going through isn't necessary, or isn't needed for them. So sometimes it genuinely is just easier to be by ourselves. Actually, I wouldn't even say it's easier. It's just less harmful.
Yeah.
You have the space to do what you need to do to calm yourself down. But again, like if you see your friends and your family living their life and you can't be a part of that, that's going to hurt in a different kind of way. And as we said earlier, it's just like, disruption to your day. Again, like not being able to work, which depending on your age, like life works in a certain type of way. We need money to be able to function, to get our necessities, to pay our bills, which means that, what if you have a house? What if you have a mortgage and you end up getting OCD, and then you can't go to work, and then bills pile up, then you're in debt, then, it's the repercussions, the risks, the complications, they are they can be so extensive. And for people on the outside who don't understand, it just looks like you've messed up your life. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was like, I don't want to live a life where everything is disrupted and I don't have consistency and I don't feel relief and I don't feel happy. But I can't get out of my head right now.
Right.
So then you're sat going through something so intense, but because you don't feel like you're going to be understood, your life crumbling around you. What if you have a partner? What if you have kids? What if you have kids, and then your kids get taken away from you because you can't provide them, you can't take them to school, for argument's sake. That's an issue.
And
because
even
you can't go outside. Exactly. Then the environment's not safe for them.
Right.
And it's just, and people don't think about that when they think about OCD. They think, well, like moving things or pushing things. Like it can affect the people around you. And again, like your life can come crumbling down. And it's hard when you aren't mentally up for the task. if you don't feel like you can do that task, you know, like I can't explain to people how just hard it is if you're not in the mental space, or if you don't think you have the mental capability, or if it's just loud in your head. Because if you think of OCD, or the anxiety or discomfort, as an alarm going off, can you like when our fire alarm goes off for the whole 3 minutes that the kitchen is smoky,
Right.
you've lost absolutely at that point. You know what I mean? You're irritated, you're angry, you're screaming, shut up! Like, it's mad. That's happening in your head. And then can you imagine if you're trying to tell yourself to shut up, and then what other people are seeing? Like, it's gonna look unexplainable.
Yeah.
And then you're gonna have a stigma attached to you, or you're going to seem like you're not safe, or like you're not functioning. Yes, you're not functioning, but you know, you might seem not safe to be around, and everything comes with implications.
Definitely.
It's misunderstood.
100%. Even, you know, the contamination thing, people may spend a lot of money on cleaning products. You know, rather than, you know, spending on the necessities, it's a lot of cleaning products because they need those to clean and to help with obsession.
The necessity is like Dettol, which I'm not gonna lie, bangs, like, smells so good. But that's their obsession. You know what I mean? Like, I can't eat, I gotta clean. Like, because if my stove isn't clean, pristinely clean, well, I'm not gonna cook on it anyway, which means I'm not gonna eat. So therefore, I'm gonna like. They require balance, whatever balance means for them.
Yeah, definitely. Hoarding, like we mentioned before, it can be a health risk to you and your loved ones. It can cause problems with hygiene, and lots of clutter can result in rodent infestations, which is something that nobody wants. You know, nobody wants to have rodents. In extreme cases, like we mentioned, hoarding can become a safety risk, such as like fire risk, just safety and injury. So if you need additional support, note when I say additional support, it's only for UK residents only. So if you are watching from elsewhere within the world, please check, you know, what support you have in your country from where you're from. But we have OCD UK, which they help support children and adults with OCD, and I'll put that in the description below. They have OCD Action, which is a national charity focusing on OCD. And another one is Over Phobia, Top UK, which again, also phobias, OCD, and all that kind of stuff. I have others as well, but I'll put them in the description box below. Kim, thank you so much. And do you have anything that you want to say lastly to people? And to your, you know, your project probably in a bit.
My project. So my project is called the Mental Health ME Project, and I started it because I feel like, obviously I'm a therapist and I understand that, but I also understand that not everyone can either go to therapy, not comfortable with the process, or can't afford it. Obviously we live in England, so we have the NHS, but that has a crazy waiting list. There are different organisations, but obviously everything is a thing, but not everyone's always comfortable speaking to a mental health professional. So the reason I created this project is because I wanted people to realise that, one, they're not alone. And there's so many people that struggle with mental health that it's pretty much a normality. But the difference that I wanted was, I think at the moment is very much, it's okay to not be okay, and it's very much left at that, which I don't like, because it is okay to not be okay, but simultaneously it's not. Do you get what I mean? I think it's so important to get the help that you need and that you require. But therapy might not be the one that something that you want. So I ask a question on a monthly basis, and then I ask everyone to either answer or share, and I share all the answers, because the way I explain it or the way we explain it could be on a medical term or in a psychological way, which might not resonate, or the way I explain it might not resonate, but the way you explain it could literally hit a mark for somebody. And I think that's so important, because everyone understands in different ways, everyone experiences things in different ways, we all write in different ways, and sometimes you just see things that just hit the spot. So I want to kind of use it as a way for people to get help, potential coping mechanisms, or even just to realize that they're actually going through a mental health struggle. And even though it's okay to not be okay, they shouldn't want to just stay that way. Like,
Sure.
try and live your best life in the most fulfilling way. And get the help that you need. Start journaling, a focus group, just ways to kind of speak to your family, you know, ways to communicate the way you're feeling, things that just make that burden, that load easier, so that you can live your best life. So that's what the Mental Health and Me project is about. My aim is to run it basically until the complete death of me. And so I ask a different question each month. And yeah, so it's for people to either get involved if they want to get involved, or literally just read and, like, you know, share and support, or send it to somebody. And then they can do it in however they want to. So I think one of my clients found it actually, and she sent me a song that she'd created, and I loved it and I posted it anyway. And so many people were like, this is amazing. And I told her, and she was super happy about it. But, you know, like, I have friends who literally replied via video, like, there's art, there's poems, there's just a bunch of stuff. And obviously, because it's on the whole thread, you can go back through any month.
That's amazing. So where is this on? Like, what platform?
At the moment, it's on Instagram, which is, oh, do you have to, like, thingy in phonetics? And I'm like, I can't remember the phonetic alphabet. It's MHXME project, PROJECT, whatever that means in phonetics. Michael, Mike, Oscar, no, Mike, Hotel. You know what?
I'll put it in the description box below, so everyone can go follow. They can see and just support, get involved, people. You know, we're all starting out as counselors, and like I said, we studied together and it was amazing. So just support Kim the best way that you can. She's a wonderful person. I just want to say thank you for joining me today. It's been wonderful, and it's been great catching up with you. And I hope that, you know, you as viewers have learned something. If you yourself or anyone that you know has OCD, please do your best to support them and get the help that you need, so that, you know, you can be okay. Thank you so much, Kim. And everyone, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.